The movie begins with two young Mormon missionaries, Sister Bamboo and Sister Paxson, discussing awkward topics like male private parts, sexual intercourse, and inappropriate movies. For those unfamiliar, Mormons refers to missionaries from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Sister Bamboo was confident and bold, while Sister Paxson was shy and reserved. Both were around 19 or 20 years old. They were on a mission to spread Christianity to people, even though modern kids often mocked or disrespected them for their beliefs. One day, the sisters arrived at the house of a man named Mr. Reed. They locked their bikes at the gate and approached him to talk about their religion. Their goal was to encourage him to adopt Christianity. At first, Mr. Reed was friendly and welcomed them into his home. However, the sisters explained that their church rules didn't allow them to enter a man's house unless another woman was present. Mr. Reed assured them that his wife, Blueberry, was inside making a pipe. Relieved, Bamboo and Paxson agreed to go inside since it was snowing heavily, and staying outside seemed unsafe. Once inside, Mr. Reed took their coats and brought them drinks to make them comfortable. They began talking, but the conversation quickly turned strange. Mr. Reed claimed he was searching for the one true religion, but then made Sister Bamboo uncomfortable by bringing up her deceased father. When Sister Paxson tried to steer the conversation back on track, Mr. Reed brought up the controversial history of Mormonism, mentioning that it used to allow polygamy, men having multiple wives. The sisters explained that polygamy was a necessity in earlier times when the population was low. However, after 1890, it was banned following a new revelation from their church. Mr. Reed dismissed this and blamed Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, for the practice in the first place. Then Mr. Reed made an odd comparison, likening religions to fast food restaurants like McDonald's or Burger King. He said people treat religions like favorite fast food chains, hopping between them as they would with burgers and fries. This analogy offended the sisters. To ease the tension, Sister Paxson asked to meet Mr. Reed's wife. He agreed and went to get her, but his expression suggested that his wife might not even be in the house. Before leaving, Mr. Reed said something unsettling to Sister Paxson. He remarked that when she dies, she will come back as a butterfly and sit on her loved one's fingers so they can recognize her presence. The sisters were left feeling increasingly uneasy in the house. The story continues as Mr. Reed goes inside his house. Sister Bamboo notices that the smell of blueberry pie in the room is coming from a scented candle, not from any real pie being made. She realizes something is wrong. Mr. Reed's wife might not even be there, and he could be trying to trap them. Bamboo decides they should leave, but the main door is locked, and her coat, containing the key to their bike lock, is with Mr. Reed. When Mr. Reed returns, Bamboo pretends she's getting a call from the church and says they need to leave. However, there's no reception on their phones. Mr. Reed tells them the front door is locked on a timer and won't open until morning. He suggests they use the back door. At this point, the sisters are in a room that looks like a prayer room. They start to feel trapped. When Reed returns their coats, Sister Paxson finds her bike lock key in her pocket, but Bamboo's key is missing. Things get even more unsettling when Reed reveals that the walls of his house are made of materials that block phone signals. He accuses the sisters of lying about the phone call. The sisters demand to meet his wife, but Reed responds with an eerie comment saying, "You still believe my wife exists, even though all the evidence suggests she doesn't." He compares this to how people believe in God or religion without proof, simply because they've been taught to since childhood. Bamboo insists on leaving through the back door. But when she opens it, she finds it leads to the basement instead of outside. Meanwhile, a senior church member notices that the sisters haven't returned and sets out to look for them. Back in Reed's house, he starts talking about religion in a strange way again. He pulls out a Monopoly board game explaining its history. He tells the sisters that Monopoly, a game released in 1935, was inspired by a lesser-known game called The Landlord's Game, designed in 1907 by Elizabeth McGee. Reed explains that The Landlord's Game was the original, but no one remembers it today, while Monopoly became incredibly popular. He uses this to draw a comparison with religion. Reed says there are three major monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. He explains that Judaism is the oldest, much like the landlord's game, but it has the fewest followers. Christianity, like Monopoly, is the most popular, even though it's based on earlier material. The sisters, growing more uncomfortable, realize that Reed's seemingly harmless talk about religion has a darker undertone. Bamboo and Paxson are now caught in an increasingly tense and sinister situation. The story continues with Reed explaining his perspective on religion and belief. He compares religions to different versions of the same song. For instance, he mentions an old song called Breathe by the Hollies, followed by Creep by Radiohead, and finally Get Free by Lana Del Rey, which was inspired by Creep. Lawsuits happened between these artists, but his point was that these are all iterations of the same original concept. Similarly, Reed claims monotheistic religions follow the same pattern, evolving from older stories but changing slightly with time. Reed also talks about miracle stories from religions, such as those about Jesus. He claims that similar stories exist in many older religions, showing how ideas repeat across time. He even suggests that 1,000 years from now, stories from popular culture like those from Star Wars might become religious tales, with characters being seen as gods. Reed then writes the words belief and disbelief on two separate doors. He tells Paxson and Bamboo that if they still believe in God after all his arguments, they should choose the belief door to leave. If they've changed their minds and no longer believe, they should choose the disbelief door. Paxson, desperate to escape, pretends to agree with Reed's ideas. She plans to choose the belief door just to get out alive. However, Bamboo pushes back, saying Reed is cherry-picking facts and twisting them to suit his narrative. Bamboo declares that she still believes in God and asks Paxson if she does too. Paxson nervously agrees. They choose the belief door, but instead of freedom, it leads them to the basement. They realize that the disbelief door also leads to the same basement. Reed had been toying with them all along. Now trapped in the basement, Bamboo starts looking for a way out but finds none. She picks up a broken wooden stick with nails on it as a makeshift weapon and gives Paxson a letter opener that she had secretly taken from Reed's room earlier. Bamboo tells Paxson that when Reed comes to the basement, she'll say a secret code word, magic underwear. This will be Paxson's signal to attack Reed with the letter opener without hesitation. As they prepare, a strange turn of events occurs. A woman suddenly enters the basement holding a blueberry pie. She starts praying in a bizarre way, folding her hands and muttering strange words. The tension builds as the sisters realize they are now part of something far more sinister than they had imagined. Upstairs, Reed had a miniature model of his house, showing how carefully he had planned everything. Using a device to communicate with the sisters in the basement, Reed claimed he had discovered the one true religion. To prove his point, he explained that a strange woman in the basement would eat a blueberry pie containing poison. She would die but then miraculously come back to life, proving his theory. The woman ate the pie and indeed died. Before anything miraculous could happen, the church elder arrived at Reed's house, looking for the two sisters. The doorbell rang, and Reed got busy dealing with the visitor. The sisters screamed for help, but their voices couldn't reach the door. Reed lied to the elder, saying no sisters had visited his house. Reed's house was meticulously designed, with hidden mechanisms that locked doors automatically and lights that turned off on timers. It became clear this wasn't the first time Reed had done something like this. He had even anticipated someone from the church might come looking for the sisters. While Reed was distracted, Bamboo tried to pull the carpet from under the basement door and used some matchsticks to work on an escape plan. However, Reed returned before they could make much progress, and the sisters were forced to stay in the basement. Back in the basement, Paxson noticed something unusual. The position of the dead woman's body had shifted slightly. She pointed this out to Bamboo, but Bamboo was too focused on lighting a match to start a fire, hoping to create an escape route. Suddenly, the woman came back to life. The woman began describing the afterlife, saying things like, "My name is White Cloud, not Heaven," and they unplugged my brain. She made a gesture for silence and whispered, "This isn't real." Just then, Reed entered the basement and sent the woman away. Reed turned to Bamboo and Paxson, declaring that they had witnessed a miracle. He claimed the woman's words proved there was no heaven or traditional afterlife. Instead, he said life was like a simulation, and when we die, our brains are simply unplugged. Reed offered to show them the real God, but for that, they would need to die first. He assured them there was nothing to fear since, like the woman, they would come back to life. Reed argued that religion thrived on fear of God, the afterlife, and our purpose in the world. He claimed to know all the answers and could reveal the truth to them. Bamboo, however, wasn't convinced. She accused Reed of performing a magic trick to confuse them. She explained that the woman likely had a near-death experience, NDE, where people often see things like bright white light or clouds. Bamboo said this happens because the brain isn't receiving enough oxygen or proper signals, creating such visions. Bamboo shared her own experience to back up her argument. When she was 4 years old, she nearly died after eating at Taco Bell during an E. coli outbreak that hospitalized 50 people. She had kidney surgery and was clinically dead for a short time but survived. Because of this, other kids used to tease her and call her Taco Hell. Bamboo's knowledge and skepticism made her determined not to fall for Reed's tricks, but their situation was far from resolved. Bamboo didn't trust Reed at all and held on to her faith in religion. This led to an argument between them. During the heated conversation, Bamboo began to say the secret word, magic underwear, signaling Paxson to attack Reed with a letter opener. But before Bamboo could finish her word, Reed suddenly attacked her with a knife, killing her. Reed stood over Bamboo's lifeless body and said, "Even though she's dead, she'll come back." But as time passed and Bamboo didn't rise, Reed cut into her arm and pulled out a small metal piece. He announced that Bamboo had an implant, which, according to him, meant she wasn't a real person but a program. That's why he claimed she didn't come back to life. Paxson was horrified and confused by this. Reed began explaining a concept called the butterfly dream. He told Paxson about an ancient Chinese philosopher, Zhuangzhou Yongji, who dreamed he was a butterfly, flying freely and happily, unaware of being human. When he woke up, he was confused. Was he Zhuangzhou dreaming of being a butterfly, or was he a butterfly now dreaming of being human? Reed used this story to explain that it's sometimes hard to tell the difference between reality and illusion. He said life itself might be an illusion like a dream, and that we might all be part of a highly advanced simulation. Before her death, Bamboo had told Paxson to challenge Reed. Finally, Paxson found her courage and started questioning his claims. It turned out Paxson was very smart but had been too scared to speak up earlier. She began by addressing the metal piece Reed had found in Bamboo. She explained it wasn't a microchip proving Bamboo was a program. It was actually a contraceptive implant, a birth control device. Reed had noticed it because of a small scar on Bamboo's arm, which suggested she had undergone a procedure. Paxson then dismantled Reed's other claims. She declared that the so-called resurrection of the woman who had eaten the poisoned pie was nothing more than a parlor trick. Paxson explained that when the first woman died, the elder from the church had arrived at the door, causing a distraction. During that time, Reed must have used a hidden mechanism in the basement to switch the dead woman with a lookalike who was alive. This was why the woman had seemed to come back to life. Paxson's bravery in challenging Reed exposed his lies and manipulations. The truth began to unravel, leaving Reed's claims of a simulated world and miracles in doubt. Paxson discovers a secret door under the table, confirming her suspicion that the dead body had been switched through it. She recalls noticing earlier that the body's position seemed slightly different. She also realizes the woman who was supposed to come back to life and play along with Reed's script had gone off script. Instead of following Reed's plan, the woman had warned them that everything was fake, which had thrown Reed off and forced him to improvise, pushing his simulation theory harder. But Paxson didn't believe Reed's simulation theory. Reed, impressed by her resistance, tells her to go to the cellar through the secret door in the basement. There, he claims, she will discover the one true religion. Paxson enters the cellar and finds a horrifying scene. Many dead bodies and various religious symbols arranged in a ritualistic manner. As she moves further, she finds the lock to her bike. Using the key from her pocket, she opens the lock and discovers a room where many women are locked in cages, kept in terrible conditions with cold and damp air. Paxson feels deep pity for these women. Just then, Reed appears and asks if she has figured out what the one true religion is. Paxson begins piecing everything together. She recalls how, when she and Bamboo first arrived, Reed had taken their coats. He had secretly removed the bike key from Bamboo's coat, and then hidden their bikes to ensure no one would notice them at the gate. Reed's wet hair from the snow had tipped her off to this earlier, though she didn't realize it at the time. Paxson realizes that Reed had been in control of everything from the start. He had planned to kill Bamboo and manipulate Paxson to bring her exactly to this moment. Everything was meticulously calculated. Now, standing in the cellar with the caged women, Paxson understands Reed's twisted belief. According to him, the one true religion is control. Reed explains his philosophy. He believes that controlling people is the ultimate purpose of religion. He compares his actions to how religious leaders manipulate vulnerable people. He says he keeps these women in horrible conditions because people who lose everything are easier to control. He even compares his tactics to religious groups who offer holy books and guidance after disasters, knowing that vulnerable people are more likely to follow them. Reed shares that the woman who had eaten the poisoned pie genuinely believed she would come back to life. He had likely convinced her of this through fake miracles. He then reveals that the woman who went off script earlier had been punished. He had injured her finger for exposing the truth to Paxson. Reed mocks Paxson, saying religion dictates every aspect of people's lives. Who they worship, what they wear, what they consider right or wrong, even something as personal as magic underwear. Hearing this, Paxson's anger boils over. As Reed continues his taunts, Paxson suddenly grabs the letter opener and attacks Reed, stabbing him in the neck. In that moment, Paxson takes back her power, rejecting Reed's twisted ideology of control. After stabbing Reed, Paxson quickly runs upstairs to escape. In the upper room, she notices a miniature model of the house. Alongside it is a reference to Dante's Inferno. For those unfamiliar, Dante's Inferno is about a journey through hell, which can be explored in detail elsewhere. Paxson then goes back to the basement to check on Bamboo, but before she can do anything, an injured Reed sneaks up behind her and stabs her in the stomach. Paxson collapses, badly injured, and Reed mocks her, saying, "Pray for us." Even as she is in pain, Paxson begins to speak about the Great Prayer Experiment. She explains how this experiment divided patients into two groups. One received prayers alongside medical treatment, while the other received only medical treatment. The experiment showed that prayers didn't speed up healing, but they did bring peace and comfort to those who prayed. As Paxson starts praying aloud, Reed seems strangely moved, almost as if the prayer is calming him too. For a moment, it feels like Reed might hesitate. But just as he prepares to kill Paxson, Bamboo, who was thought to be dead, suddenly rises. With a piece of wood embedded with nails, the same one mentioned earlier, she strikes Reed and kills him. However, Bamboo's life force quickly fades after this final act of bravery. She collapses and dies for good. Paxson, though severely injured, finds the strength to climb out of the basement. In the upper room, she looks at the miniature model of the house again and notices something. It gives her the clue she needs to escape. Using a hidden vent, Paxson makes her way outside. The landscape is covered in snow, and as Paxson stumbles through the cold, a butterfly lands on her finger. For a brief moment, she marvels at its beauty, but then it vanishes, leaving her alone once more. And with that, the story of Heretic ends, leaving Paxson as the lone survivor, her journey through chaos and control finally over.